was like, all right, I see other people buying these apartment complexes. There's more to this game. How do I get into it? And that's what led me to the Wheelbarrow Profits Academy, the Jake and Gino community, and going to the events and learning there. And then going from a fourplex to my very next unit after joining the community was a 52 unit joint venture. And we made $1 million off that in about, it was like 15 months or so, 15, 18 months. We held that onto that one. And that is what started the snowball to that 100 million portfolio that my company has now, Tri-City Equity Group.
So let's go back to when you're in the military. And this is for anybody listening, because the military, they teach you an amazing amount of skills. And as you know, and as the listeners should also know, multifamily is a team sport. What are some of the things that if you're in the military that you can lean upon to help you in your multifamily journey?
A lot of it is discipline. I think, having the discipline, just do the process, trust the process was really big. Another thing I felt like I get garnered from the military was just the confidence of, I don't need to have the full picture. If I have, if I have the training and I have a pretty good idea what's going to happen, maybe 50, 60, 70% of an idea what's going to happen, I'm very confident in, my ability that I'll figure out the other 30, 40% on the way. Because a lot of people get that analysis paralysis. They need, especially when underwriting, you get into a big, elephant of a task of underwriting a multifamily commercial deal. And it's like, a lot of people just get paralyzed by the what ifs and the things. So it's like, well, if you have the training and you have your market data and everything like that, you don't need to have the full picture. You're never going to have the full picture. You have to have most of the picture and trust your training and, build the parachute, the rest of the way. But it all goes down to that training. So if you have good training, that's where you get your confidence from.
And I think there's a couple of things that I'd like to add to that, because I've known you've been a coach in the Wheelbarrow Profits community for over 5 years. You became a coach soon after you started to learn how to implement the framework. And the couple of things I was super impressed with what you brought to the table in multifamily was your project management ability. You're able to create teams. You're able to set up systems and processes and go into various markets, whether you're in Virginia, whether you're in El Paso, Texas, whether you're up in Michigan. It's sort of the rinse and repeat. But if you don't learn the framework and you don't learn the education, you can't utilize the skills that you're taught in your job. And for anyone listening to this, you may be working as an employee and say, well, I don't really know what I can bring to the table as an investor. There are so many facets. And what was great about Vince, when he used to teach at our boot camps, he'd come in and he would show his systems and processes to manage the manager. He may not have been property management, but he was the asset manager overseeing the property manager. And if you're in the military, you are learning those skills of property management and team building, which is vital in this business. Now, as you're in 2018, you're sitting in the crowd and you're looking at Jake and Gino. And at the time, we probably had 1,500 units. You probably were saying to yourself, how did they do that? How can I do that? And what limiting beliefs were you carrying at that time as you're thinking about this? Because I know you must have been sitting out there going, I want to scale up, but I don't know how to do it right now.
I think the limiting beliefs is big. I think that's what cripples a lot of people. They have things like imposter syndrome or limiting beliefs. And absolutely, even today, I have to stay conscious of some of those things. No, absolutely. Especially somebody that didn't come from very much, growing up, it's like, I'll never get there. You always have those excuses that you got to tell yourself like, oh, that's not for me. I'll never get there. Or they had a boost or something like that. And realize that those are just mental barriers. Like exactly what you said, they're just limiting beliefs that you put in front of yourself. To me, they're just like, give yourself excuses of why you don't want to do something or start something. The community really, when you get into communities and mentorship, that's the key to get rid of the limiting beliefs. Because the mentorship, you get a coach that has been in your shoes and they've walked that path. And they say, hey, a couple years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago, I was exactly where you are. This is the challenges I face. This is how I come over it. So mentorship is really good for breaking those limiting beliefs. And then the community is huge, because then you get around, a lot of people suffer from, if you're just starting to get into the real estate, but you're the only one in your family and you're the only one in your friend circle that is trying to have these ambitions to get into, real estate or anything like that. It's very hard because, your circle of influence is like, they might not get it. They might think it's too risky. They're going to try to talk you out. They don't want to, some of them might selfishly not want to see you succeed higher than them. There's a whole kind of psychology around your circle of influence. So putting yourself into those rooms where you're in a room with 50, 100, 150 people and every single one of them has a story like you, and they want to, have more for their families, their legacies, their kids, and they're all busting those limiting beliefs together, and they're all having that energy is pretty powerful. So the community mentorship, I think for me, was allowed me to overcome the, kind of the limiting beliefs and things like that.
Do you mind if I add on to that real quick, Vince?
Of course.
I think it's important to understand that Vince is talking about your peer group. If your peer group is hanging out on the weekends, watching football games, getting drunk, while you're saying to yourself, I want to become financially free, two things are going to happen. Number one, you're going to hang out and start drinking with them. Or number two, you're going to lift them up to where you want to go. It's your choice. If you can't lift them up and you still want to go, what Vince is saying and what I believe wholeheartedly is you need to find a community that is right for you. There are so many different types of communities and masterminds out there. Vince was fortunate to find the Jake and Gino community at that time because we weren't only teaching syndications. We were teaching creative financing. We were teaching to buy smaller deals. We were teaching to buy bigger deals. The value of the Wheelbarrow Profits community really is its community members, number one, but the ability to be surrounded by people who are doing deals. Over 86,000 units the community has closed to date. They've raised over $700 million. You ain't doing that watching football on Sundays with your buddies drinking beer. It's just not happening to put yourself out there. So number one, it's that accountability that is so important. You're getting on calls every week. You are getting with your coaches, you're coming to in-person boot camps, you're having people stay on top of you saying, did you underwrite that deal? And you're also being able to ask people questions that you don't know. And that's the important part. And I wrote down here also, like I said, that accountability is really important, but it really comes down to understanding what your why is. And for you, Vince, what was it early on for real estate? Why real estate?